I was out making coffee, but I caught wind of the conversation you were having before I came on camera, and I
Mm.
overheard something uh, of a general feeling into the atmosphere right now. The sense of a paradigm's come to the end, and there's a general disillusionment with the current voices or the voices that have um, had space over the last 8 to 10 years of the cultural moment. And maybe you'll say it more than me, but uh, there's a sense of like what's actually happening and what is next, and is there something to be excited about in the conversation about masculinity, the conversation about kind of philosophy, and where we can all head for a sense of inspiration, light, vision.
That's a question, right? Um,
Yeah, it's more a statement of what I eavesdropped on, half, that I caught a piece of, but also an assertion of like, does that seem true to you? And because we've got some viewer questions actually that link onto this theme that I think might be fun for us to address.
well, I'm completely thrilled for the what's going to happen, what's wanting to happen. More and more, I think something's coming to fruition. Something wants to be born, and so I'm very optimistic and very hopeful for the future of masculinity. For instance, we've explored everything. I remember reading one time or hearing sometime that we've explored every type of government, every type of hairstyle, every type of food. There's nothing else to be created on Earth. We've explored it all, but sometimes you have to circle back to ancient wisdom and restore that into the modern culture. And I've been writing about this lately.
Hmm.
And I don't know if this is related, but the idea of our secular age, post-Enlightenment, where we've taken skepticism, science, and rationalism and elevated it to the top, where it used to be beauty, truth, and goodness. We elevated this to the top, highest ideals: science, skepticism, rationalism, and we're all laboring underneath those assumptions that those are the highest goods. But we've lost something in that process, as we are all feeling. We've lost the sense of art, the sense of a family, the sense of community, the sense of cohesion, sense of meaning, all this kind of stuff. And the big question on my mind is, how do we marry the things that have value that came before, the ancient texts, for instance, all the great religions of the world, Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, they revere their ancient texts, and there's some kind of wisdom that is passed on from generation to generation because they believe in it. But there's also, how does a modern sensibility, a modern mind, make sense of something that seems fantastical or fairy tale-ish? For instance, that in the Bible, in the Old Testament, which is Judaism, Christianity, the sun stood still for 10 minutes, or whatever it was, right? Or the Red Sea parted. And the modern sensibility says, well, God creates miracles, or some people just say that there's a scientific explanation for it, that they wrote it like that, and some people just say that it's just a parable. So the modern sensibility tries to make sense of that and bring that. Here's the thing about. I just read that in England, 25% of the young people are going back to traditional religions, like 1 in 4, which is shot up to it's hundreds of percent higher than it used to be in the past, because it's the punk culture. To go to religion is punk. It's the counterculture. And the thing is, if you examine a religion, say Buddhism, or let's say Catholic or Protestant or whatever, and you say, or Orthodox, and say, I'm going to become a Catholic. I've looked at these and I've weighed it, I measured it, and I did some studying, and I think Catholicism appeals to me. And you're a 25-year-old young man. In order to be a Catholic, you have to embrace everything, all the dogma, all the creed, all the belief system. To say I'm practicing Catholic, you have to believe in the Eucharist, becomes the body of Christ, the Trinity. You have to, in other words, embrace all of the things to say that I'm Catholic, and the saints and all this kind of stuff. You can't just cherry pick, off a buffet what the things you like about that religion necessarily. There's a buy-in you have to have, which may go against your modern scientific mind. But what do you do? So I don't know what I'm going on about here, but what I guess what I'm trying to say is, how can we take the beauty and the divinity of these ancient belief systems and mirror it with the modern belief systems of physics, the cosmos, the consciousness, and make something new? There you go.
So you've landed nicely in bear trap with your opening statement. So I'm going off a question that we had, or a tiny bit of critique. Oliver Luke Taylor has responded to a couple of our podcasts and comes in. And by the way, Oliver, I saw you got heckled for being a linguistic bro. I'm not sure if that's a negative or a positive. I think it's pretty cool to be a linguistic bro. Anyway, Oliver says, I think the language of reclaiming and restoring masculine vitality is accurate in its intention, but mistaken in its view. The in reclaiming and restoring suggests a return to something. It's literally backwards looking, not forward looking or forward creating, or perhaps not forward looking or forward creating enough.
That's his comment.
That's the comment. Yeah.
Semantics. I mean, like, when I talk about Ars Amorata subtitle, the Ars Amorata philosophy is a title. The subtitle is Restoring Beauty, or Beauty Restored, however you want to look at it. And I don't mean that. So there's a reclaim or restore or rejuvenate implicit in the way I'm constructing that, which is his complaint, right? He's saying that's we're reclaiming masculinity or something, or reclaiming beauty, restoring beauty. I think it's semantics, because there is, when it comes to beauty, for instance, there are relationships to beauty we had in the past we no longer have, which is a relationship to nature, relationship to cultural longings that we've stripped away from this modern age. We've stripped out nature, we've stripped out art, we've stripped out careful cultural curation. How's that for 3 C's in order? Careful cultural curation, to take something that has meaning and pass it to somebody else with meaning and longing and a touch of sadness and hope, that you pass down this talisman to the younger generation, and they take it reverently and pass down to them. We don't have that. That's stripped out. So yes, I definitely mean reclaiming something we lost and looking forward to something we never had. I don't see there has to be a distinction, or they both can't exist. That we're reclaiming something we had, and we're also in discovering or opening or finding something that we've never had. It's the same idea. So that's my answer to Oliver.
Okay. I'd like to pass this apart a little bit more, particularly when it comes to the view of the future. And I appreciate Oliver's question quite a lot, actually, and it's put me to think, because what I do see around us is there's clearly, we live in a time where we feel an absence. Let's say I put this squarely in the conversation that we're generally in, which is a kind of philosophical conversation between men primarily. And men that we converse with feel an absence of vision, grandeur, power, meaning, excitement at a kind of masculine nature. And I think in this absence of self-esteem, it's natural to think, well, if these things are all absent, it's logical. It feels logical in a bodily way that there could be a presence of all these things that are absent. And I think the tendency is to think, well, if these things feel absent from me now, they must have been present at some point in time. So there's a propensity to look at the past.
Well, Jordan, it's important to state that there's no such thing as the good old days. You know, we look back in the 50s and men were men and women are women, and everybody was happy, 2.5 kids and a picket fence, right? There's no such thing as the good old days. There was violence and abuse and everything that we have in all history. But, and who's to say, like there's a modern uproar against, you know, for instance, smart devices, because it's absorbing the attention spans of our kids, losing something in the communion of children playing in the streets in the dirt, and we decry that and say that that's a bad thing in society. And a Buddhist would look at it and say, but maybe it isn't a bad thing in society. Maybe those kids are going to be way better off and way more educated and way more keen for the future, you know. So but the good old days never existed, and we have this nostalgia for what, you know, wilderness living and stuff. Yeah, I remember when I was a kid building log cabins, and we were using a chainsaw. And I remember mentioning to this old guy that I was helping build this log cabin and cutting out the log, you know, scooping out the log so you could put it in place. Using this chainsaw, I'm like 14 years old. And I said, you know, the pioneers never used chainsaws. They did it by hand with an adze or something, you know, and they hacked it out with an axe. And he goes, and he said to me, yeah, but if they had chainsaws, they damn well would have used them. It's like, I think they chose this bucolic setting. They're like, give me a chainsaw. I got blisters.
So for sure in history we have legends of great men, and clearly there have been lives of great men that have done wonderful things, both great in terms of empire, but great in terms of kind of spirituality and art and genuine relics, not just kind of power, dominion, greatness, but greatness in terms of humane gifts as well. But yeah, the sense that there was a time when men were men, I think, is nonsense, because every time I really look at pictures of history, men are scrawny little peasants with bad or no teeth, short, disease riddled. I don't think, I know there's a couple of places in the world where the life expectancy is starting to decline for the first time. But in general, men in the world today are taller. They have better teeth, better health. There's more men with more muscle mass. If we had to go into some kind of physical challenge, we would be able to up our capability in ways never seen before in history. But I think what this sense of something being missing in the psyche these days, we therefore project upon the past that there must have been a greater age. You know,
Right.
the forefathers, you know, even if you go to the Wild West and you think of the stoic John Wayne archetype, yeah, you might have one stoic cowboy in the midst of, again, toothless peasants eking out an existence, dying by the age of 45 in this harsh environment, right? So this whole thing of when men were men is mythic because it is a myth and perhaps not even real, but I think it's an objective projection. And I think it's very dangerous and corrupt and populist. So I sat with a marketer when I released my LOTM program. I sat with a marketer and I said, I really want to say something like claim your vitality or claim your passion. And he said, no, you should use the word reclaim. So it says on the website, reclaim your passion, your vitality, your joy of life. Because he says, well, humans are more motivated by loss and recouping what they've lost than they are actually having something that they've never had before. So he's like, every time you write in your copy, reclaim, claim, change, just put the RE in front of it. And what you actually have is a populist marketing manipulative device that you can say, it's not about claiming your passion, Zan, reclaim the passion that you've lost. Because
Well,
and you
damn it, man,
remind
now you
people that
sold
they're
me.
hollowed out. Exactly. We'll put the link in the comments. You can have a look below. But this
Wow.
is what we're seeing with obviously with government, right? Politics these days. Make America great again, as if it was great at some point in the past, right? And even that, was it great? Was it not? That's a game of perception. But it's just hammering home the pandering to the sense that it's not great now. And then you've got this rise of a mythic past, which might be completely fabricated. And all the while, people's anger and revolutionary desire to rip things apart and change things gets stirred. So I see this kind of, people, there's a whole return to tradition thing going on. And there is a whole, you've mentioned it as well. People in our community looking back at ancient Rome, ancient Greece, the very roots of our civilization to see what we can salvage for refurbishing purposes. And I think the good act here is to see what we can salvage for refurbishing purposes. Others just want
Right.
to kind of seem to go far back into the past. And I think there can be there's a real risk of intellectual laziness here and actual regression.
Totally. And
Beefed up by this furore that this thing is missing right now. And if you leave it to the liberals in charge, whatever, it's going to go you're going to lose it even more. So we have to burrow back. And I think it's reactive and dangerous.
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's been like that in all of history. I mean, like the medieval mind discovered Rome and started to discover statues and stuff like that, and neoclassicism is born. And the romantics like Byron and Shelley and stuff like that, they went back to an earlier time and brought that forth into their age. So it's interesting. In the epoch we're 2025 right now. You look from 2025 to 2000, that's 25 years. It doesn't seem like a lot has changed except for technologically. But, you can really look at this 60s and the very distinct look and feel of the music and the hairstyles and the clothes. 70s, very distinct. 80s. Now 2000 to here is kind of the same, this last 25 years. 2025, there's something about this year that feels like there's some signaling happening or something, some kind of definitive type of thing. I don't know. It feels like a change moment to me, and I don't know why. Yeah, we're right around this time. And probably AI is going to lead, maybe be the defining thing that really shifts this world, which I fundamentally believe. I think AI is going to change everything about our future. I don't know. We're in interesting times. The Chinese proverb, maybe live in interesting times. Not good times, interesting times.
I'm also sensing just over the last month or so that the AIs that I've been using have had an upgrade or something, and it's the first time I'm starting to feel convinced by some of the quality and the information that I get back. So for the last 2-3 years, it's been quite rubbish. But I think it's starting to hit a tipping point, at least for me, where I actually feel like I'm coming out of some of my conversations with AI on the one hand with more vision, passion, creative fire, and energy, and kind of intellectual excitement. I feel like I'm coming out of my conversations with more of those things, whereas before I was kind of let down and drained. But at the same time, I feel like I'm coming out of my conversations with definitely with ChatGPT feeling gaslit. So AIs as a horrible yes man. They're horrible yes men. They will echo what you want to believe about things, and they will lie. And if you call them out on their lie, they will then apologize and say that they should do better next time, and then they'll come and tell you another lie.
Just wait. Just wait.
I sense.
Man.
I mean, I was in this conversation the most during the movie course because what I found really difficult to find were good depictions in films of a man that might offer an image for what's next. And we had flashes of it.
To find an archetype that in a film that would represent that?
To find an emanation of a man from the start to the end of a film, or at least the majority of the film, where he presented for the world an image, a truly inspiring image for this age of what a man might be and become.
But then you don't have the transformative nature of a character because he's already that guy all the way through, right?
That's the problem, because you have a story arc, right? So just by the nature of a story arc, he is going to be unwhole at least for about 90% of the film. Or he will be whole for the first bit, or a bit part character, like a grandfather figure or a sage. But even that's a bit mythic and unreal, right?
But they all are. All the people we revere from history, for instance, I adore Casanova because he was a huge influence on my young self. And I also know that modern sensibilities would look at him and go, wait a minute, this guy was a scofflaw. He was a shyster. He was he did all these kind of gambler and degenerate, and you can take that with anybody. Washington owned slaves or whatever you want to. And there's this cancel culture, which is to cancel anything against modern sensibilities, which we have now, even 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. The sitcoms, they say, like Seinfeld and Friends and stuff like that, would not pass muster today because of this modern offended mind. It just, we've upgraded our sensibilities. Well, so anybody you look at from your movie archetype guy, like John Wayne or Clint Eastwood or this kind of stuff, we would say, High Plains Drifter, Clint Eastwood movie, great movie. And he takes a woman and he drags her into the barn and, and throws her in the hay and has his way with it. Well, there's no consent there. So the things that we used to say were everything's getting thrown into this tumbler, this tumble dryer of sanitation, and everything has to be sanitized, and every consent has to be consented, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have that, believe me, but we're throwing everything out, everything, even the great archetypes, and we're saying it's not good. So we lose something when we throw away our stories. When we throw away every statue is being drawn, should be come down now. Every hero, it was not really a hero. He was like, he whatever. He did all these vile things in our modern sensibilities. The problem is we're throwing out story. We're throwing out our myths. We're throwing out our narratives. If I throw Casanova out and say, oh, because I don't agree with, I lose something fundamental. I lose something generative in my own soul. I lose something beautiful because I'm throwing out anything that we lose something strong is what I'm trying to say. And so let people cancel Casanova. I'm going to celebrate him. Say, it's my guy. Casanova's my guy. I don't care what people say.
Just to make this really specific for listeners who, might not be in this conversation that much. What does it actually mean to you that Casanova existed as the character, or that he wrote the memoir, as true or as fictitious or as skewed as the memoirs were? What does it actually give you that this mythical vagabond
Well,
exists.
his action, like he wrote a myth about his life. I imagine it's exaggerated and embellished, and he looks cool and everything, right? Of course, I get that. I got that when I was 18. I was reading it, but it gives me hope. It gives
Mm.
me a hopeful. I would read it and think, that it's inspiring to me what he said. I didn't pick it apart with a toothpick and say, no, that can't be right. You take the holistic side of it, his life and the way he wrote about it, and his delight that he wrote about it, his delight in his old age as he's writing about it. And you take that as part of, here's an example. I'm writing a book right now. I'm halfway through this book. And my book, The Alabaster Girl, was The Man with No Name. I created a character on the train. It's got a little bit of me in there. It's got a little bit of my friend Bill. It's got a little bit of, it's a character that I created. That's set apart for me, but it's kind of imagine how out of place, anachronistic that man is today. Like I'm writing this book now, right?
10, 12 years ago, that book came out.
Not even that, but this man's life. Like I'm writing the book, the second book I'm writing right now, just for you listeners, get ready for it. It's coming. It's the same man with no name, the same unclarified character, but he's older now in the second book. And the first book, he was talking to women. Oh, I'm going to tell you the secrets. I'll tell you all the secrets that you want to know. In the second book, it's the same guy, a little bit older, and he's talking to young men. Here's the secrets I didn't tell the women. And it's so out of place and anachronistic, but it's real. To talk about men's, the way the spirit of men and the spirit of women, and because the modern reader is going to go, no, we've advanced in it's reductive to talk about women having a feminine spirit and all this kind of stuff, because we've transcended all that, and yet it has to be said. And this certainly the second book is going to be, if it's gets any kind of mainstream action at all, will be blasted, because it's the Marlboro Man type of feel, but it's his truth. It's what he said. This is what I learned about women when I was young, and I went through life and I learned this. And the modern sensibility said, not all women. What are you talking about? We're not like that. Okay, so, but he acknowledges that in the book. I make sure he says it. I understand this is not politically correct, and it's more audacious and more fun, and maybe a throwback to an older time. But here it is. Let's go. And I don't care. I do not care if the modern reader says, "Oh, I don't agree with any of this, and I think it's offensive." I don't care.
So what's changed in the last 12 years? Because I remember when you put together the Alabaster Girl, you really lent into women's opinion as checks and balances. And you wanted to be as edgy and truthful as you could, but at the same time be absolutely,
I still
not
do.
say things that would get blasted. Right.
Yeah. I'm realizing that some of the things I said in the Alabaster Girl today, compared to when I wrote it or put it out, will be blasted in the way they weren't before.
Yeah.
Like the idea, this modern sensibility of it, just a trite example of a man seeing a girl on the street walking up to her and say, "Hey, you look pretty. What's your name?" Which now there's an entire swath of society says that's unwanted attention, quotes around it. You can't do that. That's not invited. And women will bristle against that, say, not because I don't want to be bothered, but because you can't just, who are you to assume you can come and talk to me? I didn't invite you. I didn't, and it's the idea, my entire book, The Alabaster Girl, is a man showing up in the world. I talk about showing up and presenting yourself to the world and invitation. Now there's an entire swath of women, maybe a certain generation of them, and men who would say that's not right. I disagree with that. That's not how you. So I'm going to live with that, and I tell you, I'm going to put out the second book, and it's going to be slammed if anybody reads it mainstream. My reader will like it. The guys that are listening to this podcast will align with it. But somebody who that's a minority, and the majority out there, if it got mainstream conversation, whatever this book, I'm certain it would get completely stomped on and say this is not right, and this is anachronism. It's out of place thinking, and we've advanced beyond that. But so be it.
So there's a force of rebel, it sounds, within you, the force of the rebel type. That's like, well, screw it. This needs to be said actually as a counterbalance to some of the conversation that you feel has become out of whack. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. In me, it's like, I really don't care that people take it the wrong way or say, no, I don't agree. I really strongly don't care. I don't care if like 50 people like it and the rest of the world hates it. If it feels like it's aligned with what I'm trying to capture, I'm okay with that.
So you said the word anachronistic. Is there something forward looking? Because I mean, that's going back 50, 70 years to yeah.
Look at James Bond, how anachronistic is. They had to soften him and make him into a feminist in the latest movies, because he just would kill people and bang the girl, bang the next girl, and that was something we loved. Everybody aspired. Everybody was like James Bond. To women and men were drawn and attracted to this archetype. Now that's an archetype that you can't do that today. So forward-looking. Well, we can take the forward-looking things that we've learned, the progressive things we've learned, like consent, and really understanding that, because for centuries and up until recently, men would lean into women and pressure them into like giving them a sexual energy or a sexual experience. And women would, I wrote about this in the Alabaster, women would give in because it's easier to give in than to deal with that guy's frustration or his anger. And they don't really want to, but they do it. So we learned these things. There's progressive things that I completely agree with, and I don't think we need to return back to the brutish way it was. But we lost something in the James Bond archetype that is manifest for us, that creates us, that gives little boys meaning and hope. And like every child in history, in every culture, when he gets to a certain age, he plays at war, plays soldiers. We're cowboys and Indians, We played cowboys and Indians, and it's all gun related, and every kid has that in his soul and is stripped and smacked out of him, and to the detriment. The idea, I mean, there's this idea that, which I agree with. If you remove the bullies from the school, you remove something fundamental to a child's development. Kids need bullies. They need to learn that the world is going to be oppressive. So I completely agree with that. We need bullies. There you go. What a thing to say. How anachronistic is that? And how out of tune with the modern sensibilities of sensitive nice guy is that? I get heated about this, and I don't get heated very often, but this is something that I'm like, I really do feel that we've lost something fundamental for the heart of young men and boys. That's why they're shooting up schools and suiciding and living soft lives. And it's reclamation. I put an RE in front of that. You better believe it's reclaiming our masculine edge. Yeah. We had something that we've lost. And so the pendulum doesn't have to swing back to all of the what we had in the past. But we've got to take, like I said, the ancient texts, the ancient structures, the ancient traditions, the ancient talismans, symbols, rituals, and pass them to the generation coming, art and all this kind of stuff, and marry it with the progressive things we learned, the great modern things that we've learned with our upgraded intellect. We have an upgraded intellect. Say what you want. The internet has educated more people than any school ever has. You have a broad spectrum of education, and AI is going to educate people more than. So we're way more educated than we were. Every child is more educated and more access to information and things than we ever were. So you take that upgraded intellect that we have, upgraded knowledge base that we have, marry it with the things that are, in our rationalism, and marry it with things that had meaning to us in the past, and create something new. There you go. That's Ars Amorata.
So the tools of, I'd like to lay out how I kind of see the progression and what some of the work underway in the world is right now, and we'll talk more about going forward. What I see as the philosophical tools of postmodernism is, one, it deconstructs every concept it can get its hands on. So something like
Yes.
masculinity, manhood, men,
Yeah.
maleness, and femininity, womanhood,
Racism.
and it tries to deconstruct everything that it's the whole concept is built of, and then reduces you actually to a blank page, which actually we can argue and take out and question at least everything until you're deconstructed. You don't have anything left. The other thing that postmodernism will do is analyze the power dynamics, so that in a certain kind of world, everything is a power play of someone's kind of will to
Yes.
live or will to dominate over another, and they might be overt, they might be covert, but the power dynamics are all revealed, so everyone's hidden intentions all become clear. And we sit in a universe where it's like, okay, we can look around, and perhaps the ultimate point in postmodernism is that we develop perfect autonomy, perfect authenticity, and we can relate with everybody as adult autonomous agents with respect and empathy and so on. So there is something, I think, that it's moving towards, and yet it leaves this general blankness, which is the absence, the lack of vision. Every vision can be questioned. Why do you want to build muscle, Zan? You're harking back actually to a compensation. You can take out the psychology of wanting to build muscle. Why are you drawing a picture for the future? Like, why are you taking your rocket to Mars? Clearly, you've got some kind of phallic obsession, and you are separate from the rest of humanity, and you have like an overinflated sense of your own elitism and deserving. So like every intention in the world can be deconstructed. Why are you doing a podcast? Why are you doing a conversation for men? Is that inherently dangerous? And so on. So the clause of doubt and deconstruction can always abound. And it's left a lot of us in this blank place. Hence why we might want to reclaim or restore or regress or return or react or just get the hell out of here and try and do something new. What I see is that there are clearly conversations in the world from men, and so the next step going beyond this is an integral conversation, or a meta-modern conversation, which is like, where do we go after this kind of blankness?
Right.
Even if we take all the best things that the postmodern thought has given us, where do we go after this blankness? So you've got people like Ken Wilber, and on top of that, someone like David Dada, who's like, there's got to be an integral view of masculinity and what that is. You've got the kind of meta-modern philosophers who are taking on that work right now. And one of the first steps that they tend to do is return to all the different phases of history and see if they can sift between the useful, like the constructive and the destructive, and see what is actually regenerative and useful for now, and see what was actually harmful. So they kind of look back through all the earlier stages of development and try and like psychological and cultural archaeologists try and claim what's been good, and then build it together in this integral man or meta-modern man. And it's for me, it's unsatisfying because it's an intellectual task. But there's some things that I like about this. Like, first, I like the generosity and the benevolence and the intent to try. One of the words I like, an RE word, is refurbish. Actually, I got this of a friend of mine, to go into the deep past and refurbish something that was sacred and lost so that it could have use today. like an old barn in the countryside, right? 300
Oh,
years ago, they stopped farming their chickens, and then 300 years later, they've turned it into a nice office. So you can go out there and write and do your business from the office space. But the whole idea that you might go into the past and refurbish Homeric lyric poetry, or you might, as John Vervaeke has done, go back and refurbish Neoplatonism,
right.
or you could take Casanova and you could refurbish Casanova and just say, if Casanova was alive in 2025, what would be beautiful, good, and true about the way he moves through life, and
Yeah.
how would I be an emanation of that? So I like the idea of refurbishment, even if I'm just playing with that mentally. Another thing to do, let's say we're looking at the blank slate of masculinity, and all we've got is deconstruction around us. Like we've got nothing left to cling on to. All the superhero, all the James Bonds, all the superheroes are one dimension, like the mythic beings are one dimensional and not complex,
Yeah.
reduced, reductive beings. The James
Deconstruct.
Bonds and the John Waynes have all been laughed out of town
Yes.
because they're anachronistic. We're looking at this blank slate. Well, it's very hard to create anything on a complete blank slate. I think,
Was
master
it
writers and
Jordan?
creativity.
The whole thing about this postmodern deconstructionist ideology, it's easy to tear down, easy,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really difficult to put something in place. That agenda, that postmodern deconstructionist agenda, offers nothing to replace it. They just protest, destroy, pull down, and they offer nothing in its place. So they remove all the things, cast out all the the mythic heroes and all the traditions of that, but they offer nothing in its place. And they just disappear like smoke. They rip things down and then disappear. It's extremely hard to build, but very easy to rip down.
So
And
let's
so,
say so let's say we're looking at that blank slate right now, and we're doing this in public in front of our listeners who have some kind of interest in the topic that we're presenting. And what we're looking to do is create an image, which is
yeah,
a vision of a man for other men as a signpost or a direction of who they might become.
yes,
Right? Little boy growing up, let's say his father's not there, or his father, he discovers quite young in his life that his father is not admirable, or he can't kind of count on his father as a figure of idealization. He needs something else, someone else to look at, because he has a need to idealize some kind of man or some kind of image of who he might become. I think this is a psychological function.
that's what
The
they
the
don't
the,
have now.
the very the normal need to idealize something or someone, right?
They don't have
So
it.
in Casanova, you have a figure who could be idealized, tremendous
Exactly.
adventures and things that he lived and gave and saw. If we're sitting in front of the blank canvas, how do we embark upon that work? Is it a case of kind of tomb raid the past, refurbish, Homer's Odyssey or the Casanova story, and give it a modern sense of clothes, and bring that forth? Or
Yeah. Yeah.
can
Okay.
we, if we were to start from scratch, what do we bring in? Do we need elements from the past? It seems like I don't know any novelist or screenwriter who could have made up a character without any kind of reference to anyone who's come before. Like, at least you would start with an archetype.
Yeah, this is super interesting because you said it very, very well. Young boys need a hero, to someone to emulate, and ideally it's their father. Their father goes into, builds businesses or plants gardens, and he comes home and the children run to him because they look up to him, and I want to be like him.
Yep.
And we've stripped that heroic element away from modern man. So fathers are not that. Now they're, housebound. Um,
And collapse.
but so the question is, do we go back and refarm these the Homeric mythic figures that we revered in the past? Yeah, I think we do. Or do we start with a new set of what, heroes? like, maybe it's some kind of weird bias I have in my mind, but I can't think of a living writer that I would want to go and talk to. I don't know why. That's weird. Like, who's the heroes nowadays? Like, I mean, can you create a new set? It's kind of what you're saying, right? Like, because we have a blank slate now. Everything's been deconstructed. Everything that had any kind of nobility to it has been, no, it wasn't noble, and stripped away. So do we go back and pull John Wayne back into the consciousness of young men? Is that even an option? I don't know. Or Casanova. But I really do think we have to go back to the traditions and memories and the thoughts of the past and pull forth what was good. I don't know. It's a great question. Like, how do you create a mythic storyline for young men if we say, well, they were not ideal in the past? So who do they look up to? Who's the heroes? That's interesting. Because there's nobody modern that I can think of. Can you?
And is there anyone that can be created that doesn't have this link to the past? Because if you, as soon as you say this is the hero and it draws from this lineage of heroes from the past, that lineage of heroes can be deconstructed and shot down for
like
having these power-hungry intentions. Right, exactly. Okay, well, and another comment from Oliver, which I think is a good one. You said the word father figure. Well, that's something that's another way that you can slice right into that and look at it's maybe a topic for another day. But little kind of, you have a character and there's little slips of the tongue, let's say, and someone can go in there with a knife and be like, okay, what's that all about? Father figure, there's an inherent kind of power dynamic at play there. Is that kosher? We need to have a look at that.
Yeah, the word patriarchal or father figure.
Yeah.
Those are loaded words nowadays, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you look at anybody, you can dig up anybody from the past and find their flaws. Martin Luther King, for instance, there's volumes written about his flaws, and we lose the heroic quality because we strip it down. We recognize everybody's flawed. So this is a super interesting conversation.
Yeah, and no one today ever can be a mythic hero because they'll be able to access our old podcasts and things that we posted online. And even, where does our notepad go? Where do our secret journals go after we die? The Dropbox becomes the inheritor of all our unpublished thoughts, and then we're really screwed, right? The things that we've written into Apple Notes or whatever it is. There's no chance of being a mythic hero who transcends all of time.
And there's no mythic heroes in science. Like think of science and physics. They used to be like standalone people that people said, this guy's incredible. Now it's all committees and layers upon layers. There's no Einstein extant in the world today. And in celebrity culture too, they're saying that there's no the Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio type archetype are kind of the last of the great movie stars. Because now they're all blended into, I don't know, it's like, I'm at the edge of my understanding, but at the very beginning I said I'm very hopeful for the future. So something the center cannot hold. The center cannot hold. And something's going to give, and something's going to be erupt and be born out of it, and something good. That I'm convinced of. And maybe we're on the cutting edge of that, Jordan, our conversations and our thinking on this, and which I think we are. I think Ars Amorata, what we're trying to understand with Ars Amorata is this restoration with an RE in front of it, or refurbishing. If you refurbish something, can something be furbished? refurbish it back then, and now you refurbish.
Furbish.
Anyway,
Yeah, so you have a blank space of a new apartment and it has to be furbished for the first time because it was never furbished before. I think that must be a logically that's a verb, a useful
we'll
verb.
refurbish
But
alive.
well, there's a couple of things that come to my mind, and I'm not sure how compelling these answers are, but the way I've been looking at things in terms of vision, a, a sense of vision or a source of excitement or hope for who I might be or what I might leave behind as a story for others. We spoke before about family lineage, right? And I had the good fortune of having my family tree that was traced back to the year 1655.
Right.
So that's work that my mother and my aunts did actually over about 10 years, 15 years or something. We've got this great family tree. And that was really interesting to look through on a, where do I come from? Who are my people? Why is my psyche like it is? How did we arrive at this point? It was brilliant. Another kind of project that I've been doing in tandem, and when I say project, it's not like a heavy thing with, post-its all over my wall. It's more like an ongoing thought experiment. But the question is, what is my chosen family tree? Right? And for people who don't feel much connection to their biological family tree or cannot find any connection to their biological family tree, or who find no resources in their biological family tree, one activity is, what is my chosen family tree? So as soon as you join the army, for example, you've got the entire family tree of the army all the way back to the birth of your nation. Or if you join, I don't know, some kind of club or a guild, or the Freemasons, the National kind of Plumbers Association or something like that. You belong to this thing with all the plumbers that ever came before. You're handed down this kind of sacred art. One thing that I've been doing in an imaginary way is thinking, well, who would be my mentors? Like, if I could choose to belong to the ideal school, or if I'm taking the baton down from people of former generations, who would be in my family tree by design, or who would be in my mentor/craft family tree by design? So there I can go back and include favorite writers, favorite artists, favorite adventurers, favorite philosophers, favorite figures of history. I might have really skewed views of who they are, but if their general inheritance they give is stimulating and fires me up, then I can draw within my kind of psyche a trail of belonging. You clearly have this. Casanova is like a 200-year-old mentor to you. You can't speak to him, but in your imagination, maybe you do. Right? Jung has the active imagination. You can turn towards the Casanova of your psyche and ask him questions and see what he says.
This is cool.
Do a little ritual and kind of summon him to write through you or something like that. But
100% channeling what came before, sure.
So this has given me something, and it is a reconnecting or a retracing project. And the other thing I'm sitting in, because
this is cool.
I don't quite know. Yeah, I don't quite know what the next vision or the next embodiment of masculine consciousness will be. A couple of stories. Once I had a tantra meditation teacher who was Israeli and gave wonderful lectures on tantra meditation. He said, I'm from the Jewish tradition, and out of the Jewish tradition, of course, you have Jesus. Jesus came along, and he said the beautiful thing about Jesus in the history of sages and spiritual teachers. So he makes this teacher made no distinction of Jesus as being separate from Buddha or any of the kind of great enlightened people of any of these traditions. These are all kind of enlightened masters who showed up kind of irrespective of geography or what tradition they were in. He said the beauty about Jesus was that before Jesus, religion and spirituality and therefore kind of awakening or enlightenment had everything to do with the power of God. So it was about the power of God, the power in the universe, and the power in the kind of material world as well. And it was an era of rule by force and rule by fire. And so to awaken and to know God was to know the omnipotence of God. And Jesus was the first sage to come along who actually realized and embodied the love of God.
Became a personal God, or became a personal, yeah. You could have a
Or saying
relationship.
rather, or saying that the power of divinity, of all creation, of this kind of
Yeah,
substance that fills and animates all of us, the power of that actually can be refracted, let's say, through the heart. And
that's
actually
right.
the ultimate substance of God is love, including compassion, forgiveness, redemption, salvation, all these things, which seem
Right.
to be new concepts around the life of Jesus. So my teacher said Jesus was the first man in the lineage actually to upgrade a whole experience and relationship of God from fear, power, courage into
That's right.
love, compassion, forgiveness. And
Yeah.
therefore there was an opportunity for the up leveling of all of humanity. And
He was the
I'm
first
sure
self-help.
right. And I'm sure kind of followers of like Buddha, Muhammad, everyone would say, well, actually kind of our prophet brought this next upgrade that you guys haven't heard that message clearly because you're into something else and you're forgetting it.
Maybe,
Um,
yeah.
I'm I'm quite interested by the concept of if I can't imagine a new version of masculinity. You talk about first principles, goodness, truth, and beauty. Well, one place I find these is in meditation or contemplation, right? So, meditation. I can enter deep enough states of consciousness where new things are revealed and higher potentials within myself are revealed. My sense will be, let's say, I'm to become a mythic figure because my art and my writing and my speaking and my podcasts and so on become so phenomenal. They leave a trace and I'm talked of,
Or
and
the
people
hero.
include me. People put me at the top of their family tree, right? 200 years into the future. um I don't know. I don't know actually what my influence is going to be, and I can't plan for my legacy. You said for this, I can to some degree plan for my legacy because I can choose the theme and I can have control over the artworks that I create. But you cannot control how the art is actually going to penetrate and then influence. And you don't know if 10 years after your great work has been released that if it's going to be anachronistic or even heralded as dangerous already,
Or
or
reinterpret
if
in a way that I
right,
didn't mean.
yeah.
Like they could be completely read in a different way and say what he meant was this, and no, I didn't mean that, but I'm in my grave.
But 60 years later, a new generation comes along and rediscovers it and reinterprets it. And they're like, our fathers were completely wrong about this Zan guy. Like, he's got something vital for us. So,
Yeah.
a lot of mythical figures, perhaps they
Or
weren't known for a few decades until their legends started to accumulate according to the need of the following generations to have a figure that they could idealize.
right.
So in
It's
500 years' time, everyone's looking for a figure of idealization. They stumble upon Alabaster Girl Part 2, and they're like, this dude, how could he be missed for 500 years, right? So we've got no control over all of this. But so I can't design that much an influence that goes into the future. I think I can only really meditate and see what happens. And if I live my life day to day towards the best of my faculties, then I have the opportunity for good things and good works to occur. That's
yeah.
all that I can do. And then whatever vision of manhood I present to the next generation is kind of an accumulation of hopefully good days. I guess it's what I'm saying is it's emerging, and it therefore will be a surprise to me.
For sure. I mean, look at the Van Gogh or any of these painters. They had no idea that their works be worth $100 million today. They couldn't
Mm-hmm.
sell a painting when they were alive, and they were neglected when they were alive. It's like, I talk about Roger Scruton. Roger Scruton was a well-known philosopher and an author and musician and all that kind of stuff. But his legend didn't take off until he died. And the moment he died, all these organizations sprang up, and everybody said, "Oh, I'm a Roger Scruton fan." But when he was alive, it wasn't there. So there's something to that. He becomes a mythic hero to people. This is a super interesting conversation. Yeah. 200 years from now, we'll be reading your works.
I believe really strongly in writing and in literature. I really do. It's become for me later in life a huge refuge. I think there's something so intimate about reading. You know, there are a few filmmakers that have made films that are so abstract they need to be made into films. And you can get something from the director. But when it's one writer and the page, and it's just them, and they've chiseled out the most authentic, and the words define the energy that they were trying to transmit, and it's words and the transmission of the feeling and the wisdom that they want to give. There's nothing more intimate than that. So I can really get the relationship you would have with Casanova, or the relationship anyone would have with a writer who, when you come across a new writer, someone like, I found Jack Kerouac in my 20s, and when you read On the Road for the first time, it's like, for heading out traveling, this guy gets the spirit entirely. It's like a level of pillow talk you couldn't get anywhere else. So I believe that there's something really big in the transmission that comes through the written word, and it drives me the thought that probably that's my best kind of arrow shot of leaving something good that will be of use to people in 200 years that have a blank slate and they don't know who to be, and they need a life and a message or a vision to look towards.
That's good. I 100% agree. I think literature, it has been my self-help. It's been my restoration of, getting over my issues has been literature, because it gives you a direction and a narration and a narrative and a myth and a story. Everything has to have a story arc, as far as I'm concerned. Everything about Jordan and Zan is got an arc. It's a story. We talk about, Vita Amorata. That's the life that from cradle to grave. That's an artful life. What does that mean? Everything we're doing this podcast is trying to put meaning into this cradle to grave journey. And we're getting stronger on the language, because I'll say this conversation, I will announce it here on this podcast. We have our Amorati membership. I'm changing that in my mind to the Amorati Guild. We have a guild, because it's an ancient thing we're channeling down to us. It's like you said, every plumber in history, it becomes part of the plumber that's in your soul. So I'm changing and I'm announcing it here in this podcast. It's not no longer an Amorati membership; it's the Amorati Guild with its own symbolism, rituals. There you go.
I just had an image I want to take back. I just had an image of a plumber basically fixing the toilet with his ass crack coming out, and feeling connected to all the plumbers of all of history. Mystically part of his whole lineage. But can you define what does guild mean? Like what does that mean, and why is it different to be part of a guild than a member?
The difference between a membership is something you belong to, but a guild is something you belong to that's something's legacy passed down, because you feel it. What we're tapping into here, Jordan, is something that is not originating with us. It's tapping into something archetypal that we're absorbing into your life and my life, because we want to. We have this hunger for this, and because there's other people that have the hunger too. We take what we've learned and we pass it. So the guild, as opposed to membership, has the connotation to me of something that we're taking and something we're passing down. There you go. We're a guild. We're not a membership. I just announced it.
Yeah, before even looking in the dictionary, and I have to look this up, the idea I get of guild is you have to be practicing. So in a membership, you can have your card and you can get away with not practicing. But to be in a guild, you have to be practicing.
That's
And
correct.
therefore, after 20, 30 years of your plumbing work, you will have a real lot of experience that you actually can pass down and will have weight behind it.
There's weight in a guild. Membership is just something you can dip in or out of. You become a member of something, then quit being a member of it. But a guild is something that has conviction and commitment behind it. There's something more storied and more gravitational based. And without me looking it up in the dictionary too, but it feels right. So there you go. We have a guild, and anybody who recognizes or feels that they're part of that archetypal spirit of the Amorati, which Casanova was an Amorati, which Cellini was an Amorati. He just didn't know it. We didn't have the nomenclature then. Now we do. It's new language around what we're doing, Jordan.
Yeah, we
And
had
more storied meaning, and we want storied meaning because we're trying to reclaim that for young men's lives, a storied vision of their life and of the future.
just
So
on this whole topic. Justin from within our membership has floated an idea of he wants to do a kind of study of the great lovers of history, or the great forgotten lovers of history, as he names it. And I mean, if he does this well, what that entails is this archaeological job of going up the imaginary family tree of every Amorati that ever lived until the
That's
very
right.
first, and then
That's right.
assessing through myths that he's able to, who makes the grade and how and why and what have they added to the guild. And maybe there are failings that we can read about. Maybe they don't have anything recorded of failings, but I see him as recording the whole Amorati lineage before you, basically everyone from the last century and before that, and that could be put into a book. We include. Okay, so rather than refurbish or draw inspiration from, terrible word, our postmodern listener is going to hate us, but we kind of go into the past and kind of grab everyone that we feel that is an inspiring figurehead for this. We kind of grab them and enfold them into our family, our spiritual family tree.
For certain, 100%, Jordan. That's the whole thing I've been doing since my earliest years. Is like trying to reconnect to something that came before. So 100%, this is fantastic. And to hell with the modern offended sensibility. I'm okay with that. I can live with that.
I want to say one last thing, which I mean, I know for some of our listeners it's going to be flogging the dead horse, but some people come to us and they say, Ars Amorata, you need to make it more practical. I have practical daily concerns of how do I talk to a woman, put my best foot forward, all of that kind of thing. And the whole notion of dating coaching, which I absolutely don't associate with any way.
No.
Mainly because the concept of dating coaching is such a small concept. It's such a small slice. And what we're trying to do in this kind of conversation is give a much, much larger context for your life than how do you understand a few things so you can have a few dates or the next girlfriend in your life. That's a small slice that might be befitting of dating coaching. But I think what we're trying to grapple with here is the whole concept of how you relate and how you feel excited to move forward with a sense of being a man in relation to women who you love and you rightfully adore, and in possession of your own manhood, which you also love and that you adore. I think this is a philosophical conversation that drives virility, actually, and excitement. It's so much broader than, how do I solve my weekly problem with this person in my life?
This is a great conversation for me. Really good, actually. There you go.
What are you taking?
Well, more and more in our conversation you and I have been having for the last, with the podcast and not with the podcast, just a general, this whole year feels like a shifting into something more sublime and something more language is becoming more precise around what we're doing, because everything that we're doing is language based, the writing, etc. And the definitions and the real clear, we have very clear things with Ars Amorata. We've got clear slogans that are original. We've got clear iconography, with our logo and stuff like that. We've got a clear title, and we've got clear manifesto. We've got clear ideas and philosophical things that stand alone, that are taking fragments from other places, but it really is a standalone thing. And the idea of redefining our membership as a guild adds to that the real weight of the historical, what we're bringing forth as a historical thing, mirrored with the modern sensibility and modern. So that's what I'm getting from this call. It's stronger than ever in my mind. Stronger than ever in my mind. Stronger than ever. What we're doing is very necessary and needed, and nobody's doing it. Nobody's doing it. Maybe there is, but I'm not aware.
I think there are a great number of men that are embarking upon a similar project. Let's say,
but I haven't met anybody.
Postmodern masculinity. Yeah, I've met a good number, but I think what sets this work apart. I love the feedback that we're linguistic bros. We've got to own that and claim it.
Linguistic bros. I love that. Put that on my grave. I like it.
Linguistic bro. Here lies linguistic bro. Number one of the guild, or at least the guild number 4,382. Maybe it ends up being. I mean, you strive since the start of the Ars Amorata actually to bring a linguistic sensibility to it. There's a lot of men's work in the world, and there's some good men's work in the world, but unless you really think what language you're using and understand that your language is actually linked to a whole,
it's precise
kind of epic history of weight and gravitas, it ends up just being that other online membership for men, or a bit of men's embodiment work that lasted for 20 years, rather than the standing for something that is fundamentally literary and aiming to give people like a message in a bottle.
That's correct.
Hundreds of years after death, aiming to give someone a source of life and hope.
Yeah, fantastic. No, it's good, Jordan. I'm good with this call. Lots for me to think of. I'm going to go right now. Right on my book.
All right. Yeah,
very good.
Thanks for listening in. And as always, post any comments, reflections, takeaways. And if you're similarly on this, if you similarly have this same work that you want to create some kind of inspired or inspiring vision for the people after you, I would love to hear a little bit about how you're doing that, how it's going, how you're failing. But also, what do you get from our conversation, and what can you bring into our conversation that you see that we might be missing? I personally value the well thought out comments that we've been receiving, and we do get a good few.
That's good, yeah, very good.
All right, we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Jordan. See you guys.